back at it again after 5 months. This time we've got Xenoblade 2. So, without further ado, just gonna hop right in. I feel first off it's probably a good idea to start off with my experience outside of just Xenoblade 2. So, back in May of 2020, I got Xenoblade Chronicles 1 Definitive Edition. And it took me a while, but I eventually beat it, and my overall impression of the game was, overall I liked it. Its story was definitely its most prominent thing that I enjoyed of it, but its gameplay was just too repetitive. It felt like no matter what you did, it was just the same thing over and over, each battle, with very little difference. So I thought it was fine, but with RPGs that are especially long, repetitive gameplay is prone to make one irritable. But that's about all I got on Xenoblade 1. This is the Xenoblade 2 review. So let's see. Prior to playing this game, I kind of knew enough throughout either my friend who enjoys this game greatly, or just general things that are pretty much known, either whether that be that Pyro and Myth are sort of like the same person, because I kind of never, I didn't know that until the Smash thing trailer, but a couple other things like the spirits sort of revealed some things in Smash Bros as well. But other than that, didn't know a whole lot going in, other than in particular a very infamous theme.
Now place your hand on my chest.
What?
But so yeah, a very good friend of mine, if I'm correct, his thoughts may have changed, but as of right now, what I know is that this game, Xenoblade 2, is currently tied for his favorite game of all time. So, going into it, I had high hopes, to say the least, as I trust this friend to enjoy good games. Which leads to this other thing. This friend of mine wanted a physical copy, but due to the fact that at the time which he did, which was when Mythra and Pyro were revealed for Smash, every copy of Xenoblade 2 became very expensive, which is reasonable to do because spike in popularity. So he had to get a European copy. And as a collector of video games, I did not want to get a European copy, which would stand out my collection. So I ended up just getting it digitally, which turned out not to be a great idea, as later on I would find out that the prices would go back down after a little bit. So I'm a little bit disappointed that I bought the digital over physical. But other than that, well, that's all I got about that just beforehand. So, overview of the plot is, the main guy is Rex. He's a salvager of the Cloud Seed. Just picks up junk and sells it. Very humble way of living. Until one day he gets offered a job, which would pay him significantly more than he would ever dream of making regularly. And so he takes it, and of course it's very suspect, and he is betrayed and supposedly killed, but he bonds with Pyra, but I almost said Mithra, with Pyra, and is spared, and he becomes her driver. And I'm not going to spend 7 minutes explaining the plot like I did last time in the Zelda review. So I'm just going to get straight to the good stuff, what I liked and what I didn't like. Starting with the pros. The gameplay is actually a huge improvement over Xenoblade 1. For Xenoblade 1, the main thing was just like, okay, break, topple, stun, repeat, break, topple, stun, repeat. Xenoblade 2 is different in that regard. Although a new change has been added that I'm not very happy about, which is you have to stand still to attack, which is not something that was in 1. You can move around and attack at the same time in 1, which was why positioning was important to do more damage. But that is still a thing in 2, positioning to do damage, but still not auto attacking while moving close to the enemy, which is a bit disappointing. But anyway, that's just a small thing. But in the overall, it's still pretty good. You still have the arts which are used, but to a greater extent this time, to just instead of filling the special meter like for Shulk's non-auto arts, it fills up a blade combo gauge, which will do big attacks the more you use an art. And these big blade elemental attacks can be used to build up a blade combo, which does an insane amount of damage, which is a good way to spice up regular combat, except I didn't get it when the game explained it, and had to use it, and just kind of figured it out on my own later on. But, so you have that on top of already still the break, topple, launch, and now smash. So you still have your blade combos and your driver combos, which is, even though it's just like another way of comboing, it does add like a lot to making it just not feel nearly as repetitive as it did in 1. Alright, second thing on the list. The plot, albeit not as good as Xenoblade 1, as many people would probably just accept at this point. It's still good. I liked it. It got me through to the end. I liked the main characters. I'll just say that. I liked the main characters. I thought that they were interesting. But, just in case someone wants to play, I'm not going to speak too much about it. But it was good. I was enjoying the story till the end. But this wasn't as great as Xenoblade 1. Next thing. So, this is something I've liked about Xenoblade 1 as well, is that in cutscenes, sometimes it's just like a lot of action, and it can go on for a while. Like, it can go on for at least like 7 or 8 minutes of just like a big cutscene with lots of action, and it's just very good. So, that is always something good, is nice cutscenes. Later on, it's like after chapter 3, I believe, maybe sometime in chapter 4, I think, you unlock a new gameplay mechanic known as Mark missions, where you get to send all your blades that you aren't really using at the moment and just send them off to do tasks for side quests, and they will sort of just, you can level up their affinity charts on their own by doing that, so you don't have to do every single one since there's so many, which is nice. And so I thought that was a great way to just, at first, when I saw these blades with all their affinity charts, I was like, oh boy, I'm never going to get through all this. But just having merc missions to sort of send them off, get XP, and just fill out their affinity charts made things a lot easier. And another thing much like Xenoblade 1, I think the setting of the story and the game is very interesting. Because whereas Xenoblade 1, takes place on the bodies of two dead titans. Well, not titans, but just the Bionis and the Mechonis. Um, the entire world of Xenoblade 2 takes place on the bodies of living titans, although there are very few of them. But what is there is just a giant sea made of clouds, the Cloud Sea, surrounding it, which, it's a more diverse setting than you really see in many other games, so I appreciated that. And last but certainly, very certainly not least, the soundtrack. Sorry. The soundtrack was amazing, which was also a thing. In common with Xenoblade 1, had a great soundtrack. Um, just always getting you going. Either whether it's a cutscene trying to make you feel a little bit down or sad or melancholic, whatever you want to call it. It's very good at expressing what emotion it wants you to feel in any particular time. If you're in a battle, you're going to feel hype because the music is hype. If you're in a dramatic scene, the music will show it very well. And it's good. Trust. Alright, here's the big list of the cons. Had the pros, now it's time for the cons. Number one, potentially the biggest con, possibly. Not quite sure. But so basic gameplay works with there's 3 drivers which use the blades of their blades. And you can only control one of them, which for 95% of the game, I just used Rex just because I was the most familiar with him. So you set up combos by doing things like break, topple, launch, and then smash. But sometimes the AI are just very funny and just do not want to do that. They just want to do their own thing. So you set up a combo for them and they just don't want to do it. So like 20% of the time I feel like they will do it, but other 80% they're just doing whatever. And that became very annoying. Alright, and then second off, outside of like the main characters which are relevant to the plot, a lot of the other side characters just were kind of boring. So Tora, Poppy, Dromark, Morag, Brigid, all of them are characters that I do not particularly care for very much, and just I did not enjoy. But that's just because they just sort of feel like they're there just to be there. They don't really serve very much of the plot outside of like they're joining the cast, but there's not really much I can say with that without spoiling anything for anyone who might potentially want to play this. So I'll just leave it at that. The game also suffers from what I would probably call a villain crisis, whereas you think one guy's the bad guy, but actually there's another bad guy who's even better than him. And then you think that this other guy's actually the bad guy, but turns out he's actually a good guy, but this other guy, he's actually the bad guy. So the whole villain thing is just, it's a big mess of like, oh, they're bad. Oh wait, maybe they're good. No, they're bad. Wait, this other guy's bad. Oh wait, is he good? It's just, it gets confusing after a while. And while like things such as like betrayals are things that happen in a story, it doesn't usually shake up not saying if there is a betrayal, but like it's not meant to like completely shake up who you think is good and who is bad. Like generally the people who you thought were bad in the beginning are still going to be pretty bad by the end. So it's just something that kind of was like on my nerves just a little bit, but that's just a me thing, probably. Alright, the next thing. So, as this was a very long game, I think as of right now, I probably logged like 65 hours on the main game, on the original vanilla, base game, not Torna. So that gameplay, while it is good, for the most part, it's pretty good. Towards the end, it did feel like a very big drag, and eventually I just became so tired of it, I went into the difficulty settings and just turned down enemy HP as low as it could be, just because the normal fights were taking way too long and I just did not care anymore. And then whenever I made it to a boss, I'd just purposefully die, reset the setting to put it back on normal, and then do it again. Just because it just was taking way too long for normal battles. Yeah, and now here's the next, probably most prominent complaint, other than the plot, that I've seen about the game. So the way you get blades is through core crystals. However, these core crystals, 99% of them are like the same exact looking one. And you have like a very small perchance. You have a small chance of getting an actually good one that looks unique and that has voiced lines and aren't the same as all the rest. And it's just kind of a waste of time. I probably spent so long just like rushing through rare core crystals trying to get a good one, because I wanted to have each character to have at least two distinct blades that were cool. But the game was like, yeah, that's going to take like 40 hours before we can actually do that. So it was not very nice. But that's just how RNG works sometimes. Another very noticeable thing, this has like a ton of things all in itself. It doesn't run very well on Switch. Like, my initial thought is that this game wasn't made for Switch, it was just ported to it really quickly so that they could sell it as like a holiday game for 2017. They weren't making this game with the Switch in mind, essentially, because most of the performance of Xenoblade 1, like the resolution was low, but other than that, it was just fine. But in Xenoblade 2, which was a lot newer to the Switch, came out its launching year, the resolution was pretty low overall. I don't know if it's the same as in 1 Definitive Edition, but it might be, but the frame rate in some areas is so bad, it's not even funny. Like, it's just immediately noticeable, and it's just like, yikes. Like, that was not a problem in Xenoblade 1. So I had the hindsight of playing that prior to 2, so. And other than that, sometimes if you fast travel to an area, when you get there, it won't have loaded completely, and just like all the textures are just missing, and you can just see like the base models without any textures. And yet again, that was not a problem in Xenoblade 1. So that last one's not a huge deal, because after a couple seconds, eventually it all loads in. But it was blatantly noticeable. Another thing, which came back to that Bleed combo thing I mentioned earlier, it introduced it, I kind of didn't care, realized it was in fact important and I needed to learn it. I went into the settings, and there was no tutorials. It's just gone. If you missed it, that's it. It won't tell you again how to do something if you weren't listening. Which was very obvious when I started Torna, which I've started. That's like one of the first things I noticed is that they keep tutorials. If you missed it, oh, look at that, it's right there in the menu, help. You can find everything that you missed. Um, Again, that's more of a me thing because I just wasn't paying attention and I was just button mashing through the text because I figured it would probably be apparent. Um, the next thing I'm probably gonna get. This is the big hot take. Although for me, hot takes are every day because I'm the king of hot takes and unpopular opinions. So playing Xenoblade One, you get the main theme of Xenoblade One is to rise up against a malevolent person of higher authority or power over you, and I would say that's also the the theme for vanilla Persona 5. Um, you know, games sort of need like a story-driven games need a good theme that people can relate to, and that was one that I thought was somewhat relatable. It's like don't just accept what you're given. If something's wrong, you need to step up. Essentially, um, you know, doesn't have to be the most in-your-face sort of way, but Xenoblade 2, on the other hand, it has a theme, but it's not something that a person can really relate to. Because from playing the game, it really feels like its main theme is just anti-war, which is not really something that people need to know. I feel like that's very this yeah, war's bad. Everyone knows that, but it's just sort of a thing of life. Not really something that every single person can apply to their own lives. So that's just probably also a me thing because I actually enjoy games and I actually enjoy stories in games. But um, other than that, the final con, um, the game overall is just a little bit too anime tropey. It feels like it hits all the marks of oh, that's anime. Like for instance, there's always a hot spring scene somewhere in any anime ever. And guess what? There's one in Xenoblade 2. Just because, I mean, it's obvious in the art style as well, which wasn't quite so with the original Xenoblade, but a little bit more so towards the definitive edition. But it's something I've seen enough times that it just gets annoying. So, but of course, that's just also a me thing, just not liking those sorts of tropes. Um, but yeah, overall, I did in fact like the game a good amount. I thought it was worth my time. I kind of wish, I didn't get the digital and I just waited to get a physical once the prices went back down. But I'd say overall, it has the edge over Xenoblade 1, except when it comes to gameplay. Um, Not gameplay, story. But yeah, so I'd probably give it a 84 out of 100. Solid B, not a B minus, not a B plus, just a B. But other than that, I plan on making a separate video probably for Torna in the Golden Country, just because it operates pretty differently in terms of its gameplay. So I feel like that just deserves its own thing. But yeah, other than that, just let me know if this video, pushed you to try it, or pushed you nah, I'm not gonna do it. Or if you like the game, dislike the game, agree with me, disagree with me. I'm just kind of curious uh, what other people think. And if my good friend is watching this getting mad at me because I gave it a 85, or no, not an 85, an 84, I'm sorry.